Hello and welcome to EDGEcast, the series where we show you tips, tricks, and best practices when using Solid Edge. This episode is going to be very much a tips and tricks episode, as I'll be talking about how to create reference text from existing draft information, and showing you how to use some useful tools for the various tables that Solid Edge has to offer. Before I begin, please bear in mind that this isn't going to be a beginner's guide to using tables and callouts. It's more aimed at users who've got some experience with these functions before, and who want to manipulate their existing callout information or see some useful tips on table editing. To start with, we're going to look at how to create reference text from existing draft text, so that when you edit the original, the reference text will automatically update. It's also important to know what you can and cannot reference, so we'll discuss that briefly. After looking at reference text, I'll run through a quick introduction to tables, and then show how to override cell values for the tables you place. Then I'll demonstrate the two methods of editing tables, how to highlight parts in an assembly drawing view by selecting the row in a parts list, and finally, what happens when you copy in a selection of cells from Microsoft Excel. In case you didn't know, yes, that is possible. I'll finish up with some miscellaneous tips on tables and callouts for all users to benefit from. So, to start off with, what is reference text in Solid Edge? Well, let's say that there's some text or information placed within a callout that needs to be copied to several drawing views or sheets. For example, a material condition that's common to many surfaces, or a view angle from an already placed drawing view, or just general information to let production staff know that all edges on a part need to be deburred. If this information is copied many times, but then has to change after placement, then this could be time-consuming. You could create a saved setting for every one of these callouts to save time copying, but that would still mean that the text has to be updated manually. A better way to achieve this would be to create reference text from existing annotations. This command is available in the callout, balloon, and feature control frame commands, or anywhere you see this little button with 2 blue crosses, 2 purple crosses, and an arrow between them. I'll show how this is done with a quick draft of one of the training files supplied with Solid Edge. This anchor part should do for what I have in mind, so let's just drag it onto a new drawing sheet. Now some additional views, just to make it look more like an engineering drawing. The scale's a little bit large, so let's bring that down. And I like to have a shaded ISO view in all my drawings. But beyond that, let's start creating a datum for a feature control frame. Let's call it datum A. Now, as this is a demo, I don't really mind where it goes. The main goal is just to create a reference to the datum. Now for the feature control frame, I'll just add in some elements such as maximum material condition, making sure that I add dividers after each one. In case you're unfamiliar with feature control frames, these are things that refer to datums that I've just placed in order to define things like concentricity, parallelism, that kind of thing. For my second element, I'm going to reference my primary datum with my reference text command right here. When I click this button, I'll see this screen, where I can select my reference, and I see that on sheet 1 I can reference existing datum frames. Now there's only one of them here, so let's select it. If I use copy instead of select, this indicates to Solid Edge that I want to copy that reference to my Windows clipboard, and it'll close this window. Now I could Ctrl V and paste it into my contents here, but instead I'll use the select OK option instead. So back into the reference text command we go. Before I continue, I should mention that you can reference text from more than just datum frames. There's a whole range of types of information you can use as references. Let's go back and create a reference to the datum frame ID again. That is, click, then select, and choose OK. You might notice this reference code in here, which can also be copied into callouts or balloons, so that they could also include the datum frame ID. Now to complete this feature control frame. For my material condition type, let's use parallelism, and a value of 0.250. Here's a preview of what it'll look like with my datum frame ID in the second box. And let's place this on the lowest part surface. You might remember I hit copy earlier on when I was looking at that datum frame reference, and that copied text is still present on my Windows clipboard. To prove that's the case, I'll start a callout command and hit Ctrl-V to paste the reference into the callout text. And what do you know? There's my reference to datum frame A. Let's add some information about what A is, shall we? We know that it refers to the top face of this component. A fairly obvious text, but it's for demonstration purposes. Up until this point, I could have created both the callout and feature control frame much quicker by just typing A. So why am I doing it this way? Well, because if I change the datum frame text, like this, both the callout and the feature control frame will now say C instead of A. If you need to refer to something many times, then this is where the power of reference text will help keep your drawings reliable by copying something to many remembered locations, so you don't have to. After all, nobody wants to copy the letter C 100 times, right? Now we know how to reference a datum frame, but as we saw, there are many more annotation types that you can refer to. For example, callouts themselves, such as whole callouts, can be referenced, as can balloon entries, drawing view properties, view plane attributes from section and auxiliary views, detail view envelope properties, world symbol properties, and item numbers from technical requirements. I recommend looking through this list of reference types available, in case any appear to be more useful to your particular industry. Just remember that you can't draw reference text from, or use reference text in, text boxes or table cells, as of the time this video was published. So that concludes my reference text section. Now on to tables. There are a wide range of tables that you can choose from, for all occasions, whether that be parts lists for assembly drawings, whole tables, bend tables for sheet metal parts, tables to denote different family of part members, simple tables for your own data entry, block tables if you use 2D blocks extensively, tolerance tables for listing all the tolerances on your draft sheets, and also copied cells from Excel. You won't find a command for this last one, but we'll be discussing how to achieve this result in just a minute. Most of the table editing commands you could need can be accessed by right-clicking the table and choosing Properties, which will bring up a window similar to this one. Different table types will have different commands available in each tab. However, as mentioned at the start of this video, I'm not going to be going into how to create tables from scratch. This is assuming that you've played around a little bit with tables already. What I'm going to look at are the less used functions that you have at your disposal. Let's start with a very useful one, cell overrides. Table cells that contain information called out from a property, such as a parts mass in a parts list, or a countable depth in a whole table, can be overridden with a user-defined value if needed. In other words, you can correct your table after the fact, and you can do this by right-clicking a cell while editing in the Table Properties Data tab, or when using direct editing. If you then choose Allow Cell Overrides, then it'll turn the cell from a read-only grey to a write-enabled white cell. Users can then type their own values in. However, the original cell value can be restored by right-clicking these overridden cells and choosing Clear Cell Overrides. Bear in mind that if you only need to change something like a round-off value, say, of a data column, or whether it has units or not, there's another method of doing this called format codes. So always consider whether an override is the best way to get a particular table result. But for now, we'll be discussing how to apply simple overrides. To demonstrate our simple cell overrides, we need an assembly drawing. Here's one I made earlier from an oil pump assembly. Let's go into the Table Properties, then into the Data tab, where we can see all of the cells present, and also add overrides. Let's say that this author property against this item isn't correct. So I'm going to right-click and allow an override for this particular cell. Now it's turned white, meaning that I can write whatever I want in it. And that goes for every table entry that's referencing a property from somewhere. So you can override as much as you want, but just remember that it's very obvious which cells have been overridden, as they'll be white, not grey. There's more I want to override, but instead of using this Table Properties method, I'm going to show you something else, the second method of editing a table in Solid Edge. If I double-click this table, I can edit it directly. There's my override in white, as you can see, which I could clear if I wanted to. but instead I'm going to override the property text of one of these mass entries. To start off with, I'll right-click the top left corner of the table and show the property text. Then I need to override this table cell, just like before. However, when I double-click the cell to edit it, I see the callout code for the item mass, and not the mass value itself. Now that only shows up because I activated the Show Property Text option earlier. If I didn't, it would show the mass value. And that's because I still want to keep the mass value, just in case the part is edited. But I want to remove the unit indicator from this cell. To do that, I'll use a format code, so just after mass item, I'll enter a / and then an uppercase N and U for no units. Hitting enter will show the same mass value, which is still associated back to the part mass, but the kg unit letters have disappeared. That's just one example of property format code, which does not override a value in a table or a callout, but instead changes how that value is displayed. More on that in a minute. Of course, you can still override by typing in a value instead, but maybe in this case, that's a little bit too silly, 1,000 kilos, so I'll clear this particular override. To exit this table editing environment, just click outside the boundaries of the table. Direct editing is much faster than using table properties to perform your edits, but you don't have quite as many options. However, there is another use for direct editing. It's possible to activate 2 additional modes, Highlight and Preview mode, in addition to the Show Property text. What do these do, I hear you ask? Well, with Highlight active, whenever you click on a table row for a subcomponent of an assembly, it'll highlight in whichever assembly drawing the view was used to create the parts list. And with Preview selected, the cell will also display a small window with a thumbnail image of the selected component. These 2 modes make it much easier to keep track of where parts are in a complex assembly drawing, or their original part shape. Let's use that oil pump draft file again to show how to do this. First, directly edit the table. Then right-click the top left corner, and we don't need to view property text, so that can be disabled, but we do need Highlight and Preview modes. That are both ticked, so let's zoom out and move this preview window somewhere useful. Now if I click on a cell in this parts list, it'll highlight the part in question in red, like this. In this assembly it's not too necessary, as it's a very simple one, but with a larger assembly, this is a great method of locating parts quickly. Now for a feature of Solid Edge that should be of interest to all you Excel users out there. The tables in Solid Edge aren't really capable of all the functions available in Excel, and it would take a major code change for them to do so. Assuming there's another type of table you want to place, with for example, a complex sum function or conditional formatting, you'll find you can't do that in Solid Edge. However, what you can do is copy cells from an Excel document straight into a Solid Edge draft. All you need to do is copy and paste. When editing these cells, a version of Excel will open up inside Solid Edge, allowing you to edit your table with MS Excel capabilities. If you use Paste Special, you can also copy cells with an existing spreadsheet link, meaning that when the spreadsheet updates, so does your Solid Edge draft document. To use Excel functions, though, just bear in mind that you do actually need to have MS Excel installed on your workstation. Solid Edge alone won't do it. Back to Solid Edge we go. Now, in the background I have an Excel document open as well, with a list of how many of these oil pumps were supplied to which customer. As you can see here, there are some functions involved and a grand total that can automatically update. Quite simple for an Excel document. I want this information in my engineering drawing, so I'll select all these cells and copy with Ctrl-C. Then I'll Alt-Tab my way back to Solid Edge and paste with Ctrl-V, clicking to place the copied cells. Now this was a simple copy-paste, so let's see what changing a cell in the original document does. Let's make some changes here. So change a value from 100, Ctrl-S to save, and then let's Alt-Tab back to Solid Edge. And, oh wait, it hasn't updated. This value still reads 100, not 150. What if I update views? Nope, still the same. That's because these copied cells aren't linked back to the original Excel document. They can't. I never copied a link. If I double-click the table, it will open up Excel, but it's an embedded version, not the document that it was copied from. This might be a good thing if you need to copy from a temporary Excel document, because if the original is moved or deleted, this engineering drawing won't be affected. But let's say the Excel document is permanent. How do we create a link to it? To start with, let's get rid of these copied cells. Then can I repaste the cells? Well, no, the paste command is grayed out. I'll have to copy them again. Now instead of a simple paste command after copying, when I'm in Solid Edge, I'm actually going to use Paste Special from this drop-down menu to paste as a linked or embedded object. How do we want to do this? Well, we need to create a link back to the Excel document, so Paste Link is the option we need. Now the table's pasted, but a little on the small side, so let's resize. Now that we've pasted that link, updating the original document should update the draft file, so let's change some more values. Like this. Have they changed in the Solid Edge table? Well, yes they have. So let's save and close the Excel document. Oh, wait, I wasn't finished. There's something else I need to change. How will I find that document again after I've closed it? Well, does anyone remember how you can open a part or assembly by double-clicking a drawing view? Let's try that and see what happens. Let's double-click, and well, Excel is opening, but it's on my other screen. Let's give it a second, and here it is, the linked document, which I can edit to update the linked table in Solid Edge. I'm almost done with today's EDGEcast episode, but I won't finish without leaving you with some miscellaneous tips about the subjects covered today. For example, whenever you see a property code, which always begins with a percentage symbol, this is something that can have format codes applied to it. Also, if you find that your referenced text might need to change style, for example if the font size needs to increase, then the copy attributes command might be useful to update the references. As of SD10, it's also possible to anchor tables to lines in your draft backgrounds, with a certain option active. Table formatting that isn't governed by table properties can be changed by editing the active table style, and if in doubt, table and callout properties contain more options than we have time to list today, so I strongly recommend having a look around them to see what's possible. Finally, if you ever need help, say if you're referencing a really obscure property, then the online help files can be accessed by pressing F1. If you don't have internet access, your CAD administrator might want to install the offline help library. Let's show you these little tips in action. Here's another location where property codes can be found in our table properties. Each of these part list columns has a property text entry, and in this case I want to change the round off for all my mass entries. This can be done with format codes, and I just so happen to have the online help document on format codes open here. I'll provide a link in the video description as well. From this, I know that to round off a property to a certain value, I need the format code /n, where n is replaced with the number of decimal places. Let's do that for the entire mass column, not just a single entry. Select it, /@ and 6. And if we close our table properties, there we have it. All of those mass entries are formatted except for item number 6, because, if you remember, the cell was already overridden. Next, this top callout was created with a reference to the larger text callout, but, as you can see, formatting doesn't copy over when using reference text. Easy enough to change though. Let's use copy dimension attributes. And we need to copy the format or style of this callout, not the prefix. Now we can copy the style from the original text to the reference text. It's copied size, color, font, etc., but I might also want to wrap the text again. And just to prove the link is still active, I'll add an update to the original text. The ability to anchor tables to backgrounds was a highly requested change and makes use of the table's location tab. You can either position a table with X and Y points, or by dragging its anchor corner to a particular key point. There's one more thing we need to do though. Under the Sketching tab, I'll need to turn on the Locate Background mode. This means that when I drag my table by its anchor point, I can locate the background geometry and attach the table to the side of my draft, instead of having to guess roughly where it should go. I also want to change some of the parts list formatting, but I haven't been able to find the option I need in table properties. What I want to do is make the outline colour light blue. And this is because usually such options aren't directly controlled by properties but by styles, because they're to do with aesthetic appearance and not how data is displayed. Such options are not usually directly controlled by properties but by styles, usually set up in your templates. In my styles menu for this document, I have only one table style, which is called normal. And that's the one that was applied to my parts list, so I think I'll modify that so that the table border is going to be blue, not black. If I apply then close, then I can view the results. And here we go, the border's changed colour. If I want to apply a different existing table style, that's going to be possible under the Table Properties General tab. Most table content format options are, however, stored in Table Properties. Just remember that if in doubt, press F1 and search for whatever you're unsure about with this box here. This format code help page is only one of the many sections of useful information online. So in summary, we've introduced the concept of reference text, which allows you to link callout text to existing information in your draft files from many sources. We've also discussed how to override table cell values, and how to highlight and preview assembly components by selecting them from a parts list. Finally, we saw how to use MS Excel data in Solid Edge drafts, and link to existing files, and also discussed several smaller tips for using both callouts and tables. Thanks very much for watching, and if you have any questions, different areas of Solid Edge you'd like to see covered in future videos, or other feedback, please either leave a comment below or send them to us by email at support@cuttingedge.co.uk. And be sure to tune in to watch the next episode of EDGEcast, where I'll be giving a quick introduction to the KeyShot rendering software.